Okay, we'll call this meeting to order. We'll take a quick roll call. Mr. Jim Felton,
Present.
Steve Ruin,
Present.
Jamie Schraback, Josek Choi,
Present.
and Steve Hunt is here. Okay. Let's stand up. After a moment of silence, we'll say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. No special presentations. And any special announcements and communications from the floor? Okay, we're rolling right along. We're on item 6, the consent agenda, approval of minutes, and Michelle sent those to us a few days ago, so hopefully you all had a chance to review them. And they look good. If so, we could get a motion in a second. We can approve those.
Should we approve minutes from February?
Very good. We have a motion.
Second to that.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No, and no abstains. So those have been approved.
Well done, Michelle.
And we are on to the Marina speed study.
Thank you, Commission Chair and Commissioners. This item is the speed study that we, last meeting, we had some technical difficulties. We've got those worked out. And so our consultant is on Zoom and we'll be presenting this.
You guys can hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay.
Take it away.
All right. You guys can see the PowerPoint presentation?
Go down to share. Ali, are you not able to, we're not seeing your screen, so
I think, am I supposed to share the screen? Because last time I think we provided.
okay, yeah. Yeah, if you could go ahead and share your screen and you can control the PowerPoint
Okay.
from your end.
All right. Okay. Let me do that then. All right. All right. Let me share my screen here. You guys let me know when you can see. All right. First, let me. One. You guys can see my screen?
Yes, we've got it.
Okay. All right. All right. All right. Just 1 minute setting up here. All right. So, good evening, commissioners. My name is Ali Mustafa. I'm with the consulting firm Kemley Hahn Associates. I'm here to present, talk about AB 43, Assembly Bill 43, and talk about Marina Speed Study, the ongoing Marina Speed Study, and then get some input from you. Frederick could not attend the meeting today for an emergency, so I'm going to just continue with the meeting. So what is Assembly Bill 43? It's a California law which was approved by the governor in October 2021. And the law actually gives the local governments more authority to set and lower speed limits on roads within the cities, particularly in residential and business districts, allowing them to prioritize pedestrian and bicycle safety by reducing areas where you have high concentration of this population. Basically, it gives cities a greater flexibility to establish speed limits based on local conditions and safety concerns. So, in summary, Assembly Bill focuses on safety, gives local authorities more power to lower their speed limits, and it also aligns with the Vision Zero initiative of the city, which aims to eliminate fatalities. As we all know, we cannot set speed limits arbitrarily. We need an ENTS study, which is known as Engineering and Traffic Survey study, to set up speed limits. So basically, what is Engineering and Traffic Survey study? It's a study conducted by agencies to assess traffic conditions on roadway segments, basically to determine the most appropriate speed limit based on factors which are prevailing speed and collision history and road characteristics within their cities. So that's the ENTS study, we call it in short form, that we typically do to set up the speed limits. Now, in summary, what ENTS study includes is we have prevailing speed there, we have collision data that we look at for the last 3 years, we look at the roadway conditions, and we look at daily traffic volumes, and finally, after looking at all these stuff, we come up with a recommendation for the new speed limit. So those are the key elements of the ENTS study. Now, this slide, what you're seeing here right now, is the table taken from California Manual of Uniform Control Devices, MUTCD in short. And what we have done with this table is we have divided the table into steps. Basically, we divided the table. The table is actually much more than this, what you see, but we have divided that into different steps. So what you see in the first column, what you see in the first column is what we call step 1, which is the 85th percentile speed. We get the 85th percentile speed from the data that we collect. And the step 2 is once you have the 85th percentile speed, you basically have to round the speed to the nearest 5 miles per hour, which we call it step 2. And the step 3 is how you round it up, whether you round it up or you round it down. So based on if you're rounding it up, then step 3 column 3 actually kicks in. But if you're rounding it down, step 4, basically that's a step 3 only, column 4 is applicable. Now you have one more step, which is if a particular roadway segment is identified as a safety corridor, or is it adjacent to a high concentration of pedestrian or bicyclist, then you can further lower the speed limits by 5 miles per hour. I'm going to go through an example which is going to give you a little more insight about how these things work and how we can lower the speed limit. But before I go there, let me briefly talk to you about safety corridor. What a safety corridor is means, and how you define areas with high concentration of pedestrians and bicyclists. So for a safety corridor, you can define safety corridor based on a number of factors. The first, you can define it based on crash severity. If you have a lot of collisions along the corridor, which are fatal and serious in injury in nature, then you can prioritize the corridor and rank them according to the severity, and then you can prioritize that as a safety corridor. The other stuff is you can also look at modes. What kind of collisions are we seeing? Are we seeing pedestrian collisions? Are we seeing bicyclists? What kind of collisions are we seeing? So, and then you can use that mode of travel and rank those segments and then prioritize those as safety corridors. Similarly, you can do it based on the disadvantaged community status, the vulnerable population, whether the roadway segment is within the proximity of the school, etc. And then in addition to that, you can basically define a safety corridor based on crash densities. You can basically have the concentration of all the crashes along a linear pattern, and then you can define which segments have a higher density, and then you can classify those as safety corridors. And then obviously you can also do as a part of the maintenance data that the city has. So these are the different ways that you can basically classify the corridor as safety corridor. Similarly, for high concentration of bicyclists and pedestrian requirements, that can be based on land use. If a roadway segment is next to schools or university or senior centers, parks, where you have a lot more people walking and biking, then you can classify that segment as an area with high concentration of ped and bike. And the same thing with the transit. If the section is next to a transit center or a TOD development, then that also falls in that category. Similarly, the presence of pedestrians and bicycle infrastructure. If you have, a defined class 1 path, then you obviously expect to see a lot more people actually using that. Similarly, for demographic factors, areas where you have a lot of children, that can also be defined as a area with high concentration of ped and bike. So now, having talked about safety corridors and high areas of high concentration of ped and bike, let me give you an example. So this was a table which I showed you before. As you can see here, the 85th percentile speed, which is the first column that you see here, these numbers are arbitrary and just for an example purposes. So if your 85th percentile speed falls between 47.5 and 50 miles per hour, that's your step 1 that you get from the data collection. The step 2 is you need to round it up to the nearest 5 miles per hour. So here the rounding is to 50 miles per hour. So we are rounding it up. Since we're rounding it up, the step 3, column 3 is applicable, which is if your rounding is nearest to up, you may round it down by 5 miles per hour. So basically you see we go from 47.5 miles to 50 miles per hour, and then AB 43 allows you to reduce it down by 5 miles per hour. Since you're not rounding, your rounding is up and not down, column 4 is not applicable. But then if the particular segment of the corridor is defined as a safety corridor using the definitions that we discussed before in the previous slide, or as an area of high concentration of ped and bike, then you can further lower it by 5 miles per hour to 40 miles per hour. So as you can see, you start with 47.5 miles per hour, you go up, round it up to 50 miles per hour. Because your rounding is up, you're allowed to reduce by 5 miles per hour. It gets you to 45 miles per hour. And then if it's a safety corridor, you can further reduce it by to 40 miles per hour. This is a second example, which involves rounding down. So if your speed limit for a particular segment, the 85th percentile speed is between 45.1 to 47.4 miles per hour, then you need to round it to the nearest 5 miles per hour. The rounding is going to get you to 45 miles per hour. And since the rounding is down, the column 3 is not applicable, but column 4 is applicable because you're rounding it down. The Assembly Bill 43 allows you to further reduce it down by 5 miles per hour. So you can reduce it down to 40 miles per hour. On top of that, if the safety corridor is, if that segment of the road is classified as a safety corridor, then you can further reduce it down by another 5 miles per hour to 35 miles per hour. So this is basically the entire table that you see with a couple of examples. And it's the same process that actually we follow as per AB 43. I have already talked about this thing. I'm not going to go in detail, but this is basically the definition of safety corridor as per AB 43. It is in the California Vehicle Code section 22358.7. It basically talks about how you define the safety corridors, and if you define it, you have the flexibility of reducing it by additional 5 miles per hour. Now, AB 43 also has another tool in the toolbox, and this is basically using the previous speed limit. The section 22358.8 of AB 43, this is an additional section which was being added, basically tells you that if the survey, if after completing the study, if the local authority finds the speed limit to be more than reasonable or safe, the local authority by ordinance retain the current speed limit or restore the immediately prior speed limit. So for example, if you have 35 miles per hour and you do the survey and you find out that the speed limit, the 85th percentile speed is much higher, you can go back and keep the existing speed limit, which is 35 miles per hour. However, you just need to ensure that the existing speed limit was established with an ENTS study, and a registered engineer has looked at the segment and determined that no additional lanes have been added to the segment. So this is one good tool that we have in AB 43 that we can actually use when we don't see speed limits. We find speed limits to be more than not safe, and we can use this and to retain the existing posted speed limit. There is another section which have been added to AB 43, which is business activity district. So if a section or an area has been defined as a business activity district, which could be urban centers, neighborhood downtowns, these kind of places. If the city have already defined these as a business activity district, then a local authority has the by ordinance can declare a 25 miles or 20 miles per hour speed limit within that area. So in total, all the reductions that you are doing cannot exceed 12.5 miles per hour. You cannot keep reducing the speed limit. You cannot keep reducing more than 12.5 miles, 12.4 miles per hour from the 85th percentile speed data that you have collected. This actually, that is the section of AB 43. Let me briefly give you where we are at with the Marina speed study. Currently, we are undertaking the Marina speed study. We have identified a total of 45 roadway segments throughout the city. The data collection, which involves the speed and the ADT, average daily traffic, has been completed. The collision analysis is ongoing right now, and we are also trying to prioritize the corridors based on safety. I think the next one, as we are presenting to the Public Works Commission, sorry about that. This is from the previous slide. I didn't want to change the slide, but our next step is to come up with a recommendation of the speed limits, which will be shared by the city, and then once we are in agreement, finalize the traffic study. For the 45 roadway segments, what you see here in this table is are the segments are identified here from and to the limits, like for example, Imjin Parkway, State Road 1 to California Avenue. That's the limit. The posted speed limit is identified in this column, and the 85th percentile speed that we got from this survey data that we collected is identified here. What we have seen is a mix of 85th percentile speed where the posted speed limit is higher than the 85th percentile speed, and many locations where the 85th percentile speed is much higher than the posted speed limit. So these are the segments that we looked at, 45 segments. What you see here is a graphical representation of the segments, which shows the existing speed limits and where the segments are. There are two segments which we have highlighted. Segment number 10 along Reservation Road and segment number 39 along Lake Drive. We're going to talk further about it and see how, as an example, how AB 43 can be used to lower the speed limits. So that's another part of the city with the existing posted speed limit. Let's take an example. Segment 10, which is Reservation Road from California Avenue to Salinas Avenue. The posted speed limit under existing condition is 45 miles per hour. The data collection shows that the 85th percentile speed is 50 miles per hour. So it's higher than the posted speed limit. If you look at this segment, the roadway characteristics of this segment is it's a 4-lane arterial with divided median. We have on-street parking on either side. We have presence of sidewalks. We have presence of driveways. We have good visibility on either side. We have some horizontal curve and vertical curve. And then the nature of land uses next to this roadway segment is residential and commercial land uses. The average daily volume traffic that we collected actually showed us that we have 14,700 vehicles, and we also looked at the collision history data for the years 2020, 2021, and 2022. Now, these are the details of that particular segment. Now, let's see how we can use AB 43 to reduce and come up with the speed limit. As I showed in the previous slide that the 85th percentile speed was 51 miles per hour. So that's our step one. Now we need to round it to the nearest 5 miles per hour. Since it's 51 miles per hour, the nearest 5 miles is 50 miles per hour. So it gets us to 50 miles per hour. Since our rounding is down, column 3 doesn't apply, but column 4 applies. Because you're rounding it down, you are allowed to additionally lower the speed limit by 45 miles by 5 miles per hour to 45 miles per hour. So as you can see, the data collected showed 51 miles per hour. We can, using AB 43, get back to 45 miles per hour, now, which is nothing but the posted speed limit. If we stop at this step 3, column 4, then our recommendation would be just to retain the existing posted speed limit of 45 miles per hour. However, if that particular segment of the corridor, was defined as a safety corridor or a corridor with a lot of ped and bike, then you can further lower it down to 40 miles per hour. You are allowed to further lower it down by 5 miles per hour to 40 miles per hour. That's one example. Now, let's look at another example, which is Lake Drive from Palm Avenue to Reservation Road. The posted speed limit along this corridor is 25 miles per hour, and the 85th percentile speed that we collected actually is 36 miles per hour. So people are actually driving fast along this corridor, much higher than the posted speed limit. The characteristics of this particular segment is it's a 2-lane collector. We have on-street parking, we have presence of sidewalks and presence of driveways, and there's good visibility, and we have residential land use on either side. So it's a residential street, posted speed limit of 25 miles per hour, but people are driving fast. We looked at the daily volume, and then that was around 1,500 vehicles. And again, we looked at the collision history for 2020 and 2021 and 2022. Now, again, we're seeing the same example, how it's applicable to this segment. So the 85th percentile speed, which you see in the column 1, is 36 miles per hour. Once we round it to the nearest 5 miles per hour, it gets us to 35 miles per hour. Now, since we are rounding it down, column 3, again, it doesn't apply, but column 4 applies, which is if you're rounding it down, you may additionally lower it by 5 miles per hour to 30 miles per hour. Now, we can bring it down to 30 miles per hour. And I'm just throwing an example, like if this particular segment was not identified as a safety corridor or as an area with high concentration of ped and bike, then obviously step 4 is not applicable. So our recommendation, if you follow the AB 43 and follow the general standards from identified in the California Vehicle Code from step 1 to step 3, we end up with 30 miles per hour, which is higher than the existing posted speed limit of 25 miles per hour. In this case, the additional section which was being added as in AB 43, which is the California Vehicle Code 22358.8, where we briefly talked about it, is the local agency by ordinance can retain the existing speed limit by ordinance, because we are we are not, we do not agree with the 30 miles per hour recommendation that we end up using the following the procedure. So we can actually go back and retain the existing speed limit by ordinance. So this is an extra stuff, extra, what do you say, ammunition, or the tool that AB 43 provides us to retain the existing speed limit. So in this case, we can have a final recommendation of maintaining the existing posted speed limit of 25 miles per hour. So these are the two examples, and we are proceeding, and we're going to come up with recommendations for all the 45 segments. And once the recommendations are being drafted, and then we come up with the initial recommendation, we are going to share that with the city, get the input from the city and from the EU commissioners, and then come up with the final recommendation for the speed limits within the city of Marina. I think that's my last slide. Anything that you would like to discuss, or have questions or need further clarifications, I'm more than happy to help and clarify those for you.
Anybody from the public have any questions?
Hello. What happens if the current speed limit is 25
Mhm.
and the study gets like 50, and then we
Yeah.
round it down to 40, but 40 is more than 12 and a half miles per hour more than 25.
Yeah, that is.
Can you still now say, no, we want to choose the 25 because
Yes,
that was the old speed limit?
Yes,
Thank you.
you can. Yes, you can say that. That is our second example that we were looking for, Lake Drive, which shows you that that scenario where if I scroll back, where you see that posted speed limit was 25 miles per hour, the data collection actually showed 36 miles per hour, so much higher than that. With the process that we follow, we end up with 30 miles per hour, so that is still higher than 25. Then in that case, we use the new section 22358.8, and by ordinance we can retain the existing speed limit of 25 miles per hour.
One question I have is,
Sure.
when we're talking speed limits in residential areas, I was under the impression it was always 25 miles per hour. And so what we're doing here is ultimately taking established speed limits, correct, that people are definitely driving above, and because of that behavior, then we're raising the limits. Is that the goal, or is it to get people to slow down and maintain in residential areas that 25 mile per hour?
So the confusion is that we assume that because there's homes on both sides, it's a residential street. A residential street is defined as interior streets inside of a neighborhood, but a collector street, like Rain Dollar is a perfect example. Rain Dollar has homes on both sides of the street from beginning to end, but Rain Dollar is a collector street. So with a collector street, the speed limit could be raised if 85th percentile was 40 miles an hour or whatever it is. In the past, before this new legislation, if the 85th percentile was 45, council could reduce it to 40, and that was it. And you had to stick with that. And now, as Ali has explained, council can say we want it to stay the way it was at 25 and pass city ordinance, and that's just what it is going forward. And this is good because I have seen where speed limits go up and there's nothing anybody can do about it. Council can't do anything about it. Mayor, city manager, nobody can. And with this new legislation, that additional authority is given to council, and it just makes things a lot better for us, because we do want to keep speeds low, especially in what we all consider residential streets when there's homes on both sides.
That's correct. Yep. And then this AB 43 actually aligns perfectly with the city's Vision Zero, where our aim is to reduce this severity of severe accidents and fatalities. So it gives us the tools to maintain the existing speed limit if the observation doesn't, uh, you know, fall in place with our expectations, and we still find the recommendation that we end up with is much higher than the existing posted speed limit.
So I have a question. Regarding step 3 in your example, is there any criteria for applying this, or can you apply this at will?
The step 3 criteria is if your rounding of 85th percentile speed is down, then you can further reducing down by 5 miles per hour. So as you can see here in this example, which you see on the slide, our 85th percentile speed was 51 miles per hour. We need to round it down to nearest 5 miles per hour. The nearest 5 mile is 50 miles per hour. So you're
So
basically
step
coming.
2 is required. My question
Yeah.
is step 3 have criteria to apply it, or is it
The step
applied
3,
at will?
no, step 3 is tied with the step 2, depending on how your rounding is. So this is the rounding to the nearest 5, but if your rounding is up or down, that's when the step 3 comes in.
My question remains, is there any criteria to applying step 3, or can it be applied at will?
It can be applied.
What he's asking, I think, Ali, is that if we derive at step 3, we're at 50 miles an hour,
Mhm.
is there a blueprint that whoever's making the decision would use to maybe recommend another notching down another 5 miles an hour? Is that correct, Steve?
Yes, or is it just at will?
Or is it just kind of on a case by case basis?
So it depends on whatever the speed is in step 1. So in here, it's 51. If it's 51, then you round down automatically because 50 is
That's
closer.
required. I
Yeah.
understand that.
So now you're at 50. That's the number we're working with. Since we rounded down, column 4, which is part of step 3, that you're looking at right now, we may lower an additional 5. We don't have
Yes.
to, but we may.
Again, my question is there any
Hmm.
way of applying step 3, or is it just at will?
It's at the will of council.
Okay.
So council can keep it at 50, or they can go down to 45. And then if it's determined to be a safety corridor, they can go down an additional 5,
Without
Sorry,
any criteria, just,
as long as it's determined to be a safety corridor.
that's for step 4, but
That's for
back-
step 4.
Back to step 3.
Yeah, step 3, they can do it without any
Just-
criteria.
Okay,
Yeah.
at will.
Yeah. Okay, I understand your question now. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm sorry that it was so obtuse.
sorry.
Makes sense.
It's my understanding that we're still processing collision data, so we don't have that factored in yet, which will determine the final recommendations.
Yes, actually, we are going to look at the collision data too, and then we try to look at the collision data and try to tie that collision rate that we end up with and compare against similar corridors, like similar collectors with the similar volumes throughout the state. So we have statewide collision rates, and we compare the collision rates that we arrive for our corridor against the statewide to see whether we are above the statewide average or we are below the statewide average. Being above the statewide average gives us that incentive, or basically we can say we are much above the statewide average, and we have the reason to lower the speed limit further. So the collision analysis will give us the tools or the backup information that is needed to reduce the speed limit further.
Did you actually close public commentary? I don't have you guys how it's actually running. We do.
So funny, I'm on the other side usually. So a couple questions I have, and I came back because I'm very interested just to hear the safety study, because we have real challenges, I think, in the community with setting speeds. And as a collector, rain dollar is one of the issues that came up after the last study where we increased the speed by 5 miles an hour on rain dollar, and along with Imogen and a couple others. And so I think that the two things that I come back to as you go through the rest of the study, and what I would hopefully ask you to look at and make recommendations on, is from an enforcement perspective, because my understanding is still that even with this regulation, from a police enforcement perspective and legality wise, the speed limits have to be within the 85th percentile. And if it's not within that and a car is speeding, that ticket is not valid. And so it's making sure that not only are we setting speeds that match the overall general plan of where we want to go as a community, that it also matches our collector roads, but that at the same time, we're setting the criteria so that our public safety and our police department, or CHP for a couple of the roads, can actually go out there and hopefully enforce the speed limits to help drive this variance down. The example that I'm going to give, I'm going to use 8th Street or 8th Avenue as a great example, or 8th Street between 2nd and 3rd Avenue. I mean, that's actually of the survey right now, that's the number example that has the biggest variance right now. Speed limit's 25. It's used as a cut through path in the morning. I know it because I use it. Don't speed 32 miles an hour, but I understand why it exists. I think the secondary challenge of this is, as we're looking at the development wise, is understanding places like 8th Avenue, as that's going to be expanded. Is eventually Shea is supposed to build out 8th Avenue from California all the way down to 2nd. And as a result of that, what is that going to do for the overall community and the homeowners along there? Because that speed limit, that's right now, it's a short spur. It's only 2 blocks long, and we're already getting a 7.2 mile an hour variance. What's going to happen when we expand that and triple the length of that road from California down, and cars see that as a really great thoroughfare? And so I think using the studies and the new California regulations to help start trying to drive our speed limits back down to what's reasonable in a lot of these, especially on the collector roads, is going to be really critical if we can combine that with the public safety enforcement side to actually ticket people and drive ones. I mean, Imogen's another one of those where it's just become a speedway of cars going very fast. And so that's what I will leave you with on your side. Yep. Is that you have a really great opportunity with this new regulation and to help try to drive this escalating speed value that we've had over in the last 10, 15 years and start to try to adjust it so that we can actually address some bigger issues in the community.
Right.
So, thank you very much.
Thank you. I mean, if I can just reply to the speed limit and enforcement, basically, if the speed limit was determined using an ENTS study, basically engineering and traffic survey study was done for that particular segment, and then the final recommendation of the speed limit came, and that's what you see as a posted speed limit sign, then if vehicles are not obeying that, then they can be issued a ticket. It doesn't have to be the 85th percentile speed, because your final recommendation was based on several factors, starting with the 85th percentile speed, but then you looked at the collision factors, you looked at what is there within the vicinity, and then you came up with the final recommendation, which was lower than the 85th percentile speeds. And that is now your posted speed limit. So if anyone is actually going higher than that, the police can actually issue them a ticket. Now, if a speed limit has been determined without an ENTS study, then that's the segment of the corridor where the tickets are not going to stand in a court of law.
Yeah, and I probably didn't make it quite clear enough. And that's exactly, and that's when we reset these values, and that's why we reset rain dollar 5 years ago. Was a reset rain dollar because the speed was in excess of the 85th percentile, and then when we studied it, we reset the speed, and all that's done is kind of increase the speed along that road now, and now it's a little bit higher, and so it's now that we can use that to actually have the ability to lower it. I think that's what I was trying to get to. So thank you.
All right. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. I didn't realize Ryan Dollar was, so Ryan Dollar's 30 miles an hour now? I didn't realize.
It may be in some areas. The only sign I see when I come to work is 25. So Rain Dollar could be 30, and if Yeah, so it must be. Yeah. Yeah, so as Ali has presented tonight, this new legislation just gives good tools to keep speeds lower. Even though streets like Rain Dollar in California are collector streets and speeds under the old methodology could go up, this gives council tools to keep them at 25 because of the amount of residents that border there. And also it gives council the authority to look at things like pedestrian use. The equestrian center is going to have a lot of pedestrians and bicyclists going there. So little things like that. It just makes things a lot easier for council now.
Any questions? Okay, thank you.
Well, thank you.
Well, I think that's the last item on the agenda, so this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.